Common Core.
Anybody else?
Want to explain why you resigned?
I was the Eagle Crest Charter School Board President, and CMU and NHA pretty much said our way or no way. I said, see ya.
So you hit the highway. Anyhow, Melanie, she goes way back to 2012 when she was running for a candidate for the Michigan Board of Education. Didn't quite make it, but she's involved in Common Core, are going around doing presentations. So it's just the 5th time we've been together, I believe, in Common Core. So with that going on and on about all her qualifications, here's Melanie.
Melanie KURDYS. I tell people I came to education through the mom route. I was in business. I retired as Director of Information Systems at Owens Corning Fiberglass when my husband was getting chased around the country by the mergers and acquisitions shark. And we moved to Louisiana, and then to California, and then to Georgia, and then to Michigan. And fortunately, he works for Perigo now, which is a stable company. So we have 3 kids, and when I stopped working, I started getting involved in school, and I did the mom stuff. You know, you go in and help in the classroom and bake cookies and sell things, and then you get involved in, well, why are the kids doing this? And you start asking questions, and then get on a curriculum committee, and then you realize that the curriculum committee is stacked against the parents, so you run for school board. So I was on board of school board. And you realize that the school board is told to mind out, the superintendent runs the district, and you guys are pretty much just decoration. And, so I don't do any of that anymore. I do this. And I ran for State Board of Ed a lot because I really did want to get on there, but I really hate the job of being on a board where people disagree with you and you know it up front because you're just banging your head against the wall, as Brian just explained to us that he was suffering. And in this job, I can debate with people, I can discuss with people, but then I can reach other people who are like-minded or interested in learning. And so that's why I concentrate on doing this. You want to turn the page? Let me just ask, how many of you have never seen a Common Core presentation? Oh, good. Okay.
Put your hands up.
That's good.
Can't count.
Yeah, that's good. Hey, I got a page turner here. There we go. Okay, I changed my presentation a little bit. Sarah Perks was going to be here. She's one of our Stop Common Core team members. She was unable to attend, but she starts with this topic. And I've not done that before, but I think she's right. What is the purpose of our public education system? It's a very important question. And it turns out that is exactly the thing that we are debating here. And Common Core is just the latest iteration of that question. So before we turn the page, take a minute in your own mind and think, what is the purpose of public education? Okay, let's get a couple opinions here. Back when our country was founded, Thomas Jefferson made the first statement about the purpose of public education. And it was really about being a representative republic, and retaining the rights of our country in the citizenry, that we, the people, are governed by our permission. And we can't give that permission to our government if we are not knowledgeable, if we can't read, if we can't cipher our numbers, if we can't do our part, if we can't be reasonable, thinking people, we can't be good citizens. And so that was the real outset of why to establish a public education system in the United States. But now, Bill Gates, who's the chief funder of Common Core, has a different vision. And he says the purpose of education is to create college-ready and career-ready citizens. That you are able to succeed in this 21st century global economy. So we are now looking at K-12 as a meat factory, where we are creating people who can go to work. And this is exactly a very important difference. I don't think Thomas Jefferson's vision ever suggested that kids who graduate from college shouldn't be able to get a job, right? I don't think that was ever implied. Unfortunately, I honestly believe in this definition, you are not an educated citizenry. You are a compliant employee. You are ready to do the job that the businesses want you to do. And that is why you have the strange bed partners of Chamber of Commerce and the MEA. How many times do big business roundtable people like John Engler, our ex-governor, partner with the likes of Arnie Duncan? Right? How many other topics do you know that they see eye to eye on? So when you really try to decipher what's happening here, right? Try to figure out why are we headed down this road? It is because the wrong people are leading us for the wrong reason. And these people are what you would consider the elites of our country. The political elites, the business elites. They're not all Republicans, and they're not all Democrats. They're both. They are all elites. And the rest of us, regular people, grassroots parents, grandparents, teachers, school board members, the real citizens, have been left out of the conversation entirely and are being told how our K-12 system is going to work and given very little power to control it. And I'm here to explain to you how to take the power back, because it belongs to us. And they won't have it if we don't give it to them. And now is the time for us to stand up. Just to take this one more step, this idea that being a person in the 21st century is so entirely different than being a person in any other century, that it requires an entirely different way to educate people. Let me just ask you, who is more ready to solve the problems of the 21st century? If we could bring Thomas Jefferson and stand him up here next to Nancy Pelosi, who would you put your faith in?
Thomas Jefferson.
If we could bring Abraham Lincoln back and put him next to Barack Obama, who would you put your faith in? And of all the kids who grew up being Waltons, if you are old enough to remember what I'm talking about, versus all the kids who are growing up being Kardashians, who is going to be better able to lead our country, to take us where we need to go, whether you are a leader of your family, or you are a leader of the state, or you are a leader of the nation? I reject the assumption that the 21st century is any different than any other time when we're talking about teaching people to be grown-ups. Sure, there are things that are different. Sure, there are different things to learn. I mean, obviously, technology's come a long way. But that doesn't change the fundamental basics of teaching people. The methods of teaching back during Aristotle's time are as relevant to teaching today. And that is just true. And these people who are on the campaign that insist that the 21st century is different are the same people who insist that the Constitution is different. Because they don't understand that our governance structure, the Constitution, was founded on the things that are forever true, and that is the nature of man. We love, we hate, we fight, we embrace, we're charitable, we're selfish, we're all those things. And we're those things based on what we learn, what we're taught, but you can't make those things go away. I will fight with someone over something. It's in us. You can't make it go away. And so the government structure has to be there to balance those truths of people. And that's what our Constitution was structured on. If you want more on this, take Constitution 101 from Hillsdale College. It's free online. It's totally awesome. Chapter 9, I listened to twice and cried both times. So, all right, so let's move on. Let's talk about Common Core. Common Core are standards and assessments for K-12, defining what kids should know and be able to do, to be used by all states. So, standardizing what kids should know and be able to do every grade. Okay, this is a little long, I hope you can read it, but this is right off the website of Common Core. You can go online and you can actually read the standards if you're interested. I'm going to talk about a few of them specifically. But they make these statements, and these are the talking points that anyone you run into who says they're for Common Core will refer to. That they are best of existing state standards, they provide clear and consistent learning goals, they are career and college ready, they demonstrate what kids are supposed to know and be able to do so that every parent and teacher can understand them. And they're research and evidence-based, clear and understandable, aligned with college expectations, based on rigorous content, built on strengths and lessons from other states, informed by top-performing countries. You can see that. www.corestandards.org. Okay, next page. So this is marketing, right? What I'm going to show you is all the fallacies in this entire statement. If it were true, if these statements were true, I would not be here today. It is by the very fact that these statements are not true that I am here today. Next page. Quote, building on the best of state standards. First of all, Michigan did not have bad standards, right? We, based on the very people who are involved in Common Core, Achieve, for example, did a review of Michigan standards back in 2003, found our standards to be among the best in the country, an example for others to follow. In 2010, the Fordham Foundation did an excellent write-up about Common Core and comparing Common Core standards to every state, both math and English. Very long report, very well done. And they said that our math standards were clear and concise, more clear and concise. There were recommendations on the English language arts, that's true. But they also said, as for the singular case of Massachusetts, which they spent about a page and a half talking about, there we find the state has led the nation in achievement gains over the past decade based largely on their excellent standards. Now, if the Governors Association, if they had started out and said, let's take the best in the country and build from there and make other states' participation voluntary, again, I wouldn't be here. It is because they did not do that. Okay. In fact, what they did, the National Governors Association and the state school chiefs, along with the funder-in-chief, hired these people, these are their names, to write the standards, unelected, unaccountable bureaucrats who are not educators, to write the standards. And then they established review committees. None of the material had minutes. None of the meetings had agendas or documentation of any sort. We know people who participated in these committees, and they have testified in many states that that is the truth. The committees, and those of you who participated in school committees will see this pattern. This is the way they do it. The committees didn't actually meet in a room the way many of us who come from a business orientation would imagine how a committee works. And so there was no opportunity for the committee participants to debate with each other, to discuss. I'm concerned about this, what do you think? And perhaps even agree. Instead, what happened was the committee members were given the materials and then told to send their comments electronically to a central person who would then sort out and determine what was relevant, what was irrelevant, what was appropriate, and then published the results. And some of the participants were quite surprised to find that none of their comments were ever in anything. And so they started making phone calls and discovered there were others on the committee who agreed with them. So it wasn't just their comments that weren't appearing. So this facade of teachers and high-level people who participated in these committees was conducted in a way that these guys could say, oh, but we had reviews by all these great educators, but in essence, their opinions were withheld. Okay, so they say that the standards clearly demonstrate what kids are supposed to learn and do at each grade level, so that every parent and teacher can understand and support their learning. So last summer, we did have extensive hearings at the legislature. Andy Shore, excellent legislator, Democrat, excellent guy, asked a really good question of Michael Cohen, president of CHIEF, and he said, "Sir, I just don't understand that claim. Because my kids are in elementary school, I have 2 daughters in elementary school, I am college educated. I cannot understand their homework, I cannot help them with their math homework." Cohen's first answer was, well, sometimes kids need tutors. And Representative Shore just sat there and looked at him and he said, "You do recall that I said they are elementary school, and you do recall that I said I am college educated." And then Michael Cohen says, "The standards were not written with parents in mind." This is the truth. That is a lie. Okay. You might have seen this example recently. It's going around on the internet. It actually comes with a video of, what is it, 5 painful minutes of this teacher explaining this method of adding 9 plus 6. In a way that demonstrates how 10 is a friendly number. Now, I am a math tutor. As I look at the process she's using, the first thing the child has to do is decompose the 6 to 1 and 5. Now, decomposing 6 to 1 and 5 implies you know 1 plus 5 is 6, which kids don't actually have to know till they're in 4th grade, right? And you also have to know that 1 and 5 is the right decomposure at this point, not 3 plus 3, or 2 plus 4, or 0 plus 6. So somehow the kid's gotta know this, and then put together the 9 and the 1, because 10 is a friendly number. Now I won't argue the point that 10 plus 5 is easier to add for most people than 9 plus 6. I won't argue that point. It's true. But there is no way you can get from 9 plus 6 is the same as 10 plus 5 when a child doesn't know their addition facts. There's just no way. So this is absurd. This is an absurd waste of students' time, and it's an absurd abomination of sending homework home that engaged parents want to help with, and it's like, wow. All right, next page. Oh, gotcha.
We can show, as Jane says, that we have that 3-minute video if you
If
want.
anybody wants to see that, it's painful. Okay, that they are research and evidence-based. Okay, the truth of the matter is, we know how to teach kids to read, right? But in the United States, more than 35% of kids K-12 cannot read at grade level. Now, people will argue that it's because they're poor, they have behavior problems, they don't get fed at home, they're not sleeping well, horse time. It's because the schools are not using the primary method that we all know by research works, and that's phonics. And Common Core continues the fabled implementation of this stupid invention of the 80s called whole language that is largely discredited. Unfortunately, most of our elementary school teachers today who are not over 40, over 45, have no clue how to teach reading because they were never taught how to use phonics to teach reading. Why the heck do you think Hooked on Phonics is such a profitable business? Because it works. I read an article in the paper the other day that really scared me. Maybe you've seen it. It was about how wealthier families are investing more in their kids' education than poor families, creating a larger gap between ability groups. And it is because anybody who has means, who sees their second grader not able to read, is going to get them help or going to buy Hooked on Phonics. And the poor mom who doesn't have the means but still notices her kid's not reading, she'll go to the school and complain to the teacher, and the teacher will say, well, you're poor, your kid can't learn. I mean, how ridiculous is that? But they don't use phonics. Okay, next. Oh, there was a very important point there, that here's the thing. If you are experimenting on a small group, which is why we do small group field tests on most things, the injury, if you're wrong, is small. When you experiment on your entire nation's children, K-12, the recovery, the damage you create and the recovery time is unbelievable. And that is why I am incredibly passionate about why this is wrong and we have to stop it. Okay, in high school, we all learned Euclidean geometry. You might not recognize that term, Euclidean geometry, because it was the only kind of geometry we were taught. It was the only kind. So nobody called it anything. Common Core turns the high school geometry class completely on its head and starts with the end rather than the beginning. And they're teaching this thing called transformational geometry. You can look it up yourself if you like, all right? That this guy that invented transformational geometry, a Russian guy, said, teachers who love their subject are able, during special sessions and additional workshops, to introduce highly motivated students the world with different geometries. But it has to be honestly admitted that such magnificent ideas are unsuitable for acceptance into the mass schools. A travesty that all of our high schools in the state of Michigan are now using this stupid way of teaching geometry. And what are the implications of that for kids who want to be architects, carpenters, engineers? We have no idea. Unless they get to college and they reteach them geometry. And what's that going to take? A couple extra years. Okay, Thomas Moore from Hillsdale College. Excellent. If you have a chance to read his book, it's a great book. But he pointed out this standard, CC standard RL 2.9, Common Core, reading, and language arts, second grade, 9th standard. By the end of the year, read and comprehend literature, including stories and poetry, in the grades 2 through 3 complexity band proficiently with scaffolding as needed at the high end of the range. Clear and concise, right? Or, as Professor Moore rewrote the standard, students in second grade should read and understand more difficult books at the end of the year than at the beginning. They may need help. If you hear educators talk about these standards, scaffolding is some new fancy word that is, I mean, it's the right image, but it's just dumb. Because, you know, we're parents. Why would a professional use words parents don't recognize? Because I'm smart. And I know things you don't understand. And at some point, you are going to be intimidated and no longer ask questions. Because if you're in a PTA meeting and they talk about scaffolding, are you going to be the one that raises your hand and say, oh, what's scaffolding? I mean, you know, very few people are that brave. If you were in a meeting with me,
What is scaffolding?
it is go back, as Dr. Moore said, go back, you went, yeah. As Dr. Moore said, it's creating the support structure around the kids' help structure.
But support structures have been around.
It's a new It's a new word intended to intimidate. That's what it is. Okay, and they also developed a new text complexity model. If you're interested, you can read that in the appendix. You know, in word processing, there's a complexity Kincaid-Fleischmann scoring. And you can run it on something you wrote, and it'll tell you the approximate grade level of what you've written. And these automated systems are good because what they do, length of sentence, the vocabulary you use, sentence structure, things like that to measure that. And in normal writing, it's very helpful. But in literature, it's not helpful because literature is more complex. And in their analysis, Grapes of Wrath comes out as a 2-3 grade level complexity. But the Library of Congress calls it a 9-12 grade level. And it is because the complexity is in character development, the themes, the storyline, not so much in the vocabulary, which is why it's a very good generic 9-12 book, because kids are not intimidated by it. Kids who are weaker readers are not intimidated by it, but it's great literature, and it's great history about the United States. So it's an important topic that second graders won't get.
No. What is the Common Core complexity score for the Bible?
I don't know that they've run that. But I will tell you, the whole big debate about, Jim wants me to take a break here. So.
I wanted to take just a moment at this time and forgive me for interrupting. Yeah, one of the things that we do, our organization is self-funded, and freedom is not free. And I want to take this moment to pass this around. We pay for the room, we pay for materials, expenses. Here you go, man. Put your piggyback in there. And also,
The people at the back of the room need to put in more.
something that I came across this afternoon as a resource, okay? I just found out this today. It was emailed to me. The Thomas More Law Firm has a website, a resource website for any of you who want to do your own research. And this is that resource page. And I'm going to put that link, the one at the top, which says, where's the URL? www.thomasmore. I'm going to put that link on our webpage. Any of you who want to find it. I wanted to point one other thing out. What I'd like to ask is if any of the 8 to 10 educators, administrators who are in favor of Common Core, would they please raise their hand and offer their favorable viewpoint of Common Core? Would any of the legislators, the state legislators, who were invited to come and support their votes on Common Core, and by that I mean any of the state legislators within 20 miles of this building, who were invited and didn't even bother to give the courtesy of a reply. And they were invited several times. And I'm not going to list their names. You know who your state legislators are. What we like to do in this room, when we have a difficult subject, a contentious subject, a subject where there are people with opposing viewpoints, we like to present both viewpoints. Would the person who is supporting Common Core please stand up to challenge Melanie Curtis? Why? Because when you have two sides of an issue, people can look at pros and cons. They can decide on their own. No one's telling them to decide what is on. It's pretty clear that Melanie is opposed to Common Core. And you will be able to challenge her and ask her questions. But you will not be able to challenge somebody who either voted for it or the educators that are implementing it who refuse to be here tonight. I'd like you people, if you have the Holland Sentinel laying around, a neighbor having it, I want you to go to yesterday's paper. If you don't have yesterday's paper, I want you to go on your internet and go to hollandsentinel.com. And I want you to read an article written submitted by me, but it was written by several of our members. And it's in the op-ed section, should be the opinion page, and it's considered policy, should be politics or issues. I want you to read that, and that is the purpose of the Ottawa County Patriots. The Ottawa County Patriots is not here to oppose something. It's not here to present one viewpoint. It's here to present two viewpoints. But it's not always possible. Okay? And it's not only possible because there are people unwilling to defend their positions. There's no other organization in town where you can go and have a forum, a presentation on a contentious subject and hear both viewpoints. Yes, you may hear a viewpoint and the audience members have the opportunity to ask that person a question. That's not the same as coming in here and saying, I'm running for blah, 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 or I support a Flat Earth Society, and then handing it to somebody over here that says, I support a Round Earth Society. It's not the same. You don't get both viewpoints like we try to offer here. Sorry for the interruption. I did need it to pass around the bucket, but I will give it back to Melanie.
There have only been two people willing to debate me. Eileen Weiser, who's on the State Board of Ed, and Gary Naird from Great Lakes Education Project, which presents itself as a conservative-leaning group that advocates for school choice. But I argue with him all the time that school choice doesn't exist with Common Core.
He was invited here. He wouldn't reply. He didn't reply.
He thinks he won already, so there's no point in the debate. But, if you have 10 auto dealers in your community, but they're only allowed to sell black Fords, what is the essence of choice? Right? Okay, let's see. We'll flip through these a little bit more quickly. Okay, aligned with college and career expectations, a quote right from one of the authors, as I mentioned, you saw Jason Zimba's name, that this is not intended to an elite university. It's for 2-year non-selective community colleges. So it is not college ready as most parents who are intending to send their kids to college mean. Next page. Based on rigorous content, they have this concept of writing based on evidence, but they argue that the only way you can grade a paper that a student did where they wrote supposedly based on evidence is if they answer the question based on the evidence presented. Okay? So the evidence has to be in the question. So here's an example. That in 2130, the oceans began to rise over farmland and cities. In 300 years, most of the eastern United States was covered with water. After reading the text, students were supposed to answer several questions, including what caused all the problems on Earth and how could it have been avoided? So you can't, the student, first of all, it's in the future dreaming. It's not reality. Secondly, they can only use those words, that information to answer the question. So when they write these assessments, the people who write these assessments and the way they deliver them is critical. They write the assessments the way they want. They have them on the computer. They don't come from the computer at the school. They come from the computer through the internet. And I try to explain to the people who support these things to say, you can't know what those questions are. Because the company who makes the questions could change them dynamically, instantaneously, and then change them back again. You can't know. I mean, it's weird. There are rules that teachers sign that they will not look at the computer as the students are taking the tests. We cannot get a set of questions to review to say, this is the pool of questions that will be asked. So this is where the lack of local control becomes really, really visible in terms of your school district. As much as they might want to reassure you, they can't. Okay.
Let me just point out that unless the eastern United States is Atlantis and it sinks into the ocean, there's not enough water on the entire planet, melted or not melted, to cover the the eastern United States.
There you go. I mean, it's just not, so I didn't even study that part, so it's not even scientifically possible. The other point about rigorous is, as with many things that people who want to change the way we think about things, they change the definition of the words. So the definition of rigor, according to Bill McCallum, is not the way mathematicians use it. That is, to indicate a correct and complete change of logical reasoning. It's not that. That's not rigor. It is rigorous preparation like a sport, where you demonstrate all the necessary proficiencies in a balanced way, whatever that means. So I'll give you an example of multiplication proficiency. In the olden days, our time, to determine if a kid knew how to multiply, you'd give them maybe 20 multiplication problems, 3 by 3, and say solve them. And if they get 17 of them correct, you'd say, okay, that kid is proficient, he knows how to multiply. Now in Common Core we have fewer standards, fewer expectations. So instead of 20, you only give them 10. But each problem must be solved using 3 different methods. And then you have to write a paragraph comparing and contrasting your methods. And what we have seen in the scoring, as demonstrated in states like New York, where it's further ahead than we are, the student who answered all 10 questions using one method, the traditional algorithm, and got every one right, is not proficient. And the student who answered all 10 questions using 3 different methods and writing the paragraph and got them all wrong is proficient.
What?
Proficient. That is the kid who can multiply.
Huh?
He's working for McDonald's now.
And any logical thinking person would think that is ridiculous.
I have a bridge that we're trying to sell.
Yeah. But the point is, they're putting the context on the necessary proficiencies in a balanced way. That is, you have deeper thinking about multiplication because you can use 3 different methods and write a paragraph. And we all know many people who are very talented in math in 4th grade, where we used to teach multiplication, now it's 5th grade, were really good at math, but you ask them to explain it to you or write a paragraph about it, they go, huh? I don't know, just works, watch. And they're impressed with themselves, but now they can be, because we don't consider them proficient. This was the point about Massachusetts. Dr. Sandra Stotsky was on the state Department of Ed in Massachusetts in the 1990s. She was part of the team that did the most amazing effort in improving the education system in Massachusetts. And the education system is complex. Standards are just one part. You have to build all around it. Your teacher training, your schools of education, your professional development, and your assessments to go with it, and of course scoring your assessments. And this was before No Child Left Behind. They just did it because they wanted to do it. They wanted to get their kids better educated. And so their student achievement, I mean real learning, skyrocketed in the early 2000s and has stayed the best in the country since then. And Dr. Stotsky is one of our spies who was on one of these committees who refused to approve the Common Core standards because she knows what works and she knows it's not included in this. So she didn't sign off on it. Now, you have states like Maryland and Florida who during the No Child Left Behind stage came up. And a lot of what they did was something that I argued when I was on our school board, and that is if you could teach every kid to read by the end of 3rd grade, you would improve your student outcomes dramatically. Because the design of K-12 school is such that up until 3rd grade, you teach to read, and after that, you read to learn. You learn to read to learn. So the whole point is, when you're in 4th or 5th grade and you can't read, social studies is a pain, science is a pain, even math is a pain. You have to be able to read. So if you put all your energy in really trying to make sure your kids know how to read, that's a good thing. Well, Michigan legislature buys that idea. So what's their solution? Let's use Common Core, which does not teach teachers how to teach kids how to read, because it does not emphasize phonics as the primary method of teaching reading, and fail kids at the end of 3rd grade if they can't read. So we're going to punish the children because the system is broken. And then we're going to punish the system because we'll fail, in some school districts, 60% of the 3rd graders. And they get to stay in 3rd grade for 2 years if that's what it takes. And then you ask them, and then what exactly are they going to do with those kids the 2nd year of 3rd grade they didn't do with them the 1st year of 3rd grade? Are you serious? You think this little teeny thing, which is an excellent idea and it's the right concept, but is in a broken system, won't work. And all you're doing is punishing kids and the system. And I can't seem to connect with people. Yeah, question.
Excuse me, I just want to point out that in Michigan, we have not adopted that you're going to fail a kid at 3rd grade. There is not enough support at this point for it to even be brought before. So
It's a bill that was submitted by Amanda Price, Representative Amanda Price.
However, Amanda Price has admitted that she does not have the support at this
Right,
point.
at this point, it's not, but that doesn't mean there aren't people who are advocating for it.
That's right, but it is not a done thing.
No, it's not a done
I
deal.
think that's what you presented.
Oh, okay, I don't mean to. That is the solution that has been presented. They have not offered an alternative, which would be get out of Common Core and use phonics. That would be the easy one. But they've already gone down the Common Core, so we need to watch out. Okay, next. Next, yeah. Informed by other top-performing countries, well,
The note on the bottom, not California or Indiana.
right. Well, okay, so California and Indiana were considered to have good standards before Common Core, but they did not have the system around it. They did not do good things with their teacher development and their schools of education, because as I said, school is a system. There's a lot of factors that need to come together to make sure that all kids really learn. And so that's why Indiana and California aren't even, well, they're in the middle somewhere. Michigan's one of the lower ones. And you can see we've declined since 2003. I will make a point. Majority of people who are on the State Board of Education and our State Superintendent, Mike Flanagan, have all been in office over this period of time. And I asked them, if anything you've done since 2000 has given us these results, why should I believe that your newest idea will work? I think it's time to fire them all. Fortunately, Mike Flanagan is retiring. Okay, next. Informed by other top-performing countries. Informed by is not the same thing as benchmark. It means I looked at them and I made something else. And I mean, a really good example is most countries have Algebra 1 in 8th grade. Common Core has Algebra 1 in 9th grade. Now you might ask, most of us took Algebra 1 in 9th grade. This is one of the changes that has happened in education that I actually am very comfortable with. And what it is, if you design your K-8 math curriculum such that kids are algebra ready by 8th grade, which is not that hard to do, if you think about it, and they take Algebra 1 in 8th grade. Some kids will do really, really well, and then in 9th grade, they're ready for geometry. Some kids will struggle, and they won't do really well. They take Algebra 1 again in 9th grade, deliver differently. It doesn't affect their grade point average. It doesn't put them behind. It is a reasonable track. And places that have tried it have found that most kids can master Algebra 1, and then their odds of getting through successfully Algebra 2 greatly increase. And algebra is, there's a great educator, Horace Mann, a black man, a civil rights leader as well, who says that algebra is the key to civil rights and independence of the black community. And most of our black kids are not prepared to be able to succeed in Algebra 1. Okay. Okay, the current legislative status. We had a hold on Common Core through the budget process. The legislators passed a resolution allowing Common Core in Michigan. If you're interested in the resolution, HCR 11, you can find it on the Michigan Legislature site, search on that. It is a very nice resolution. It's got a lot of nice things in there that could be taken advantage of. The problem is it's a resolution. It does not have the power of law. The only power of law line is the one that put us back into Common Core. And so most schools are ignoring it because they are bound by the assessments that will be coming down the road, which is the next piece. So we fought to get the Common Core assessment that Michigan was aligned with was called Smarter Balanced, SBAC. We were actually managing members of that consortium, and we put a hold on that and required that the Department of Ed keep the MEP for a year, is what they ended up with, as they look at alternative sources to Smarter Balance. What we have discovered is that the Department of Ed, because they have contacts with Smarter Balance, are able to buy the questions from Smarter Balance, buy their test question pool, and put it in and call it MEP. So the bad test questions are coming through. So it's the same thing that happened in Indiana. Indiana said they're not following Common Core standards anymore. They took Common Core standards, made them a little bit worse, and now they're calling them Indiana standards. So it's sad. The next thing that's happening is this is going to cost a lot of money. The biggest money is on the computers and the new textbooks, and those are covered by your local millages. The State Department of Ed, when asked how much Common Core would cost, they said not much, and we asked them this question, and they said, we're not responsible for including these in our estimates. Those are local expenses. So a way you can stop it in your community is to vote no on the millages. And I know it's hard. I know, it's for the kids, but I have a whole other presentation on education funding, and I'll tell you, I honestly believe the problem, a lot of the problems we have in education is there is too much money in it. It goes to the wrong places. It attracts charlatans, people who invent things like transformational geometry. Okay. The other thing is data. Okay, so they are collecting over 400 data elements on all of our kids, starting in kindergarten. And I think a lot of parents don't realize that this testing and this data collection is starting on kindergartners. And it does include personal information, medical information, psychological information, values, and you really don't want it there. The school will tell you, don't worry, we're not sending it to the feds. Technically, they're right. They are not sending it to the feds. The state is not sending it to the feds. You know who's sending it to the feds? The testing company. They're sending it to the feds. And the change, there were laws. There's a set of laws called the FERPA laws, Family Education Rights Protection Act, that were changed to allow any entity determined to have a viable interest. And you can get the data. And people say, well, it's not individual data. It doesn't have the person's name and address connected to their data, but it's got this thing called a UIC code. I saw a picture of kids who were stamped babies with the UPC code followed through. But let me ask you, how many pieces of data about you does somebody need to know it's you? So my daughter applied for our math and science school when we moved to Kalamazoo. It was a take off the name and address. And one of the judges called me and said, oh, I knew that was your daughter because they just moved here from Georgia. Right, now my family's just relocated to Portage from Georgia, not that many. So, so you opt out. Now, Brian, will you show them your?
Yeah. Last night I met with the, I had a presentation in front of the Hamilton School Board. My experience as a school board president, a little bit like yours, my presentation was more about data mining. My biggest concern was data mining. Protection of the children is clearly at risk, and even the protection of parents is at risk. On your Facebook, I believe there's a little article by a Chinese nationalist who now lives in America. She explains that back in China, this was all the information that was collected on her. And had she not signed off a waiver to come back to China, she would have been blacklisted. So, for the fun of it, I decided to print this out. This is 47 pages of data which is from the CEDEDS website.
Those are the data element names.
This is for one child. One child.
One child.
Weeks of gestation, weight at birth. Parents' religion, parents' income.
It's the database that they populate over the students' experience in school.
This runs close to 40 feet long. This
How
is
old?
one child.
How old is that
They
child?
start at kindergarten. They will start at, if you enroll your kids in preschool, they will start in preschool. They will start, if you're in any government-associated preschool, they will, they have, even the state ones, they'll start collecting it.
But how old was this child to have 47 pages accumulated?
This is every child.
Yeah.
Each child in the classroom has this document.
So like, for example, it's got number of your vaccination records, all right? So if you haven't had a certain vaccination, that field is not populated yet for you as a child. But the data element is there waiting to find out what your,
Also, which is kind of a concern,
yes,
Keeping track of.
right.
also a big concern for communities is how teachers' data is collected on this document. Every teacher is identified, where they went to school is identified, who was their administrators, what was the name of the institution, who were their instructors. So what happens is this database is able to collect over time, and let's say, for instance, weeks of gestation. Turns out that children born under 36 weeks becomes an issue. They find out that these kids really are not very successful children. That will become kind of a pushing point within the data system.
Is this in effect now?
This is in
Yes.
effect right now.
Right,
Is this
yes.
in effect in all school systems or just your school?
No,
No,
all.
also.
In Michigan.
This is
Ah.
the government database. This is called the CEDS, the Common Education Data System.
How long has this been in effect?
Only within the last couple of years.
When did we give them the information on the gestation?
Any kind of health record that your child takes to school with them will have these kind of health-related questions. They'll be like a survey type things.
So let me tell you, you heard Brian Calley recently said he was against Common Core, but he supports P20. Now, originally P20 was preschool to 20 years old, and so it's education on and tracking kids all during that period of time. But he admitted, which we have known, it's prenatal to 20 years old. That's what the vision is, and so they're starting to collect this kind of data on babies in the hospital. And they intend, and the argument is, well, if we have this, we can figure out what social programs help improve student outcomes and all these things. And here's the insidious way it works. Let's pretend for a minute you have a middle school child, all right? And that's about when they start talking about careers. And so they send home a note, the counselor is going to be advising your student about their, working with them about their strengths and selecting a career. So, right, that sounds helpful. And so they target your child and tell them, okay, based on your strengths, these are the good careers for you. And your kid says, yeah, but I want to be an astronaut. Oh, no, you're really not cut out to be an astronaut. You need to be picked from these categories of things. And if you doubt that, there was a woman on Fox News recently, and she had a special needs child, and her school district was, mainstreaming the special needs kids, so they were in the class with the other students. They got pulled out unexpectedly for a field trip that did not have permission to go to the local recycling center to learn a job skill. And only the special ed kids were pulled out for this lesson, for this field trip. And you say, would a job at a recycling center be a good job for somebody who is handicapped or has issues about things? Sure. I had an uncle who worked at the post office as a sorter. Was it the school's place to do that without the parents' permission and make that judgment for those young kids? No, that's the problem.
Is this information given to the school on a voluntary basis by the parents?
Yes, many times, and that's why I have right here, the action is opt out. Okay, next slide. So the key here is, I promised you a way we can win, a way we can take this back, and the way is by the parents and their willingness to stand up for their children. The Thomas More Law Center worked with us to develop an opt-out form that is legally researched based on Michigan law. It is absolutely the right of the parents to opt their kids out of data collection, obnoxious assessments, inappropriate reading materials, any lesson. And you do not explain. This is really important. You take the form, and we've got some, it's got you put the kid's name in here, and then you check all the things you want to opt out of. They're each identified with all the things that you can opt out of. You put the student's ID, grade, and date, sign it, and take it in. You take it into the office, and you give it to the receptionist, and you say, sign this that you received it, sign and date it that you received it, and make a copy for me, and then please give it to the principal. And so what we've had happen is they'll say, oh, well, wait a minute, we have to talk to the principal. That's fine, right? Bring principal out. Now, I advise parents to take 2 copies, because if at that point the principal refuses to sign it, because you say, this is not for you to agree with. This is for you to comply with. It is my right. Then they say, well, why do you want to do it? I do not have to explain. I'm not here to debate with you. I have my reasons. This is my right. And if the person won't sign it, you stand there and you sign it. Spoke with principal, refused to sign, date and time, here you go. Right? And you write it on your copy and their copy, right in front of them. Refused to sign, witnessed by the receptionist who is standing there, right? I mean, so you write it on there yourself and you leave it. And when they call you to talk about it, you say, is there something on their form you don't understand? If there's something on the form you don't understand, I'll be glad to explain it to you. Or you can talk to my attorney, the Thomas More Law Firm. And if you check out their website, they are giving us legal help. Okay? So if they say, well, we're going to have our attorney talk to, fine, go ahead, talk to your attorney. But in the meantime, you must comply. Now, we had an incident where a mom turned him in, and the day of the test, the teachers were pulled out of professional development, and they were substitutes in the classroom. And the kids were forced to take the assessment. And she contacted the law firm, and she said, what can we do? And they said, well, here's the problem. It's a legitimate mistake. It's hard to prove that they did that intentionally. Okay? So, in the back, we bought bracelets. I got them, they're just at cost for you. My kid is not common, opted out of Common Core. Kids that can wear them to school every day. Every day, I tell them wear them every day. And say, My mom said, no, don't, and you can't make me. Now, we have on the other end of the spectrum, we have policies that can be passed by school boards that are respectful of parents' right to opt out, where the board specifically says parents' right to opt out is recognized, their children are to be given legitimate alternate activities, and that's it. That's all there is to it. And it's a policy of the district so that this intimidation factor can't happen in the classroom. And your elected officials, that's the least they can do for you. Now, they will argue that it'll cost us millions, we'll get on a bad list, it's going to make us look really bad. Not my problem, you know? I mean, I wish you guys would do the right thing, and then you wouldn't have this problem. Now, the fact of the matter is, it will take 3 years of being on a bad list before they even start to lose any money. So it's not like, you know, and at that, you have to have 6% of the student population opting out, because the policy is 95% participation. So if a school has 6% opt out for 3 years, yeah, maybe they'll end up on a bad list and maybe lose some money. But that gives them plenty of time to do the right thing.
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
They need to end up on a bad list. We went to a Common Core meeting a year ago, September, up in Muskegon, and there was a mom there whose daughter was, I think, in 9th grade, but it might have been a sophomore year. She made us, anyone who wanted it, 5-page, double-page copy of a book that her daughter was forced to read. I don't know anything about pornography, but I am a retired elementary school teacher. I would not let Bill read it.
Is that The Bluest Eye?
Yes, horrific, and not good literature. Horrific.
We had, when I was on the KURDYS school board, we had a dad come to a board meeting. He got up to the microphone. Now this was, we had alternated televised and untelevised, so it was not televised. And he said, I want to read from the book my 6th grader was assigned. He got through 2 sentences before they cut his mic off and made him stop. And he's asked the question, why is my 6th grader required to read something that I cannot read to you out loud at a board meeting?
And no matter where she went to fight this, all of them were on the committee that chose this book, and the teachers were ostracizing those who opted out.
And it's listed in the Common Core appendix. Now, people will argue that those books are suggestions. Schools don't have to do them. But this is exactly the problem. The schools that do choose them are exonerated because it's on the Common Core list. You know, we're just using what is recommended on the Common Core list. And there's nobody providing oversight. So by the time you know your kid is reading this bad crap, they've already read part of it. And you know, you go, so they went to the teacher said it's my right to choose. They went to the principal says I support my teachers. So they came to the board. And you know what the superintendent told us? This is not a board level issue. And that's bad enough. The part that infuriated me was there was only one other board member who was livid like me. I was appalled. I said, you are going to sit here, call yourself a board member, and allow this to happen in our district because the superintendent says it's okay? Are you crazy? I couldn't believe it. I just couldn't believe it. And that's why that board, I mean, unless you get a majority on your board, in which case you can make some difference. You can stop this kind of stuff. But, you know, you need a majority. And unfortunately, they're like brain dead. I swear, you go to the Michigan Association of School Board meetings, and that's what they do. That's about anything. All right, more questions.
Okay. How long does it take to get all this information data? By the 5th grade, 10th grade, or by 12th grade?
To get it all filled in,
Yeah.
they probably have 80% of it by the time they're in 3rd or 4th grade. But see, they track it every year. So like your attendance record or absenteeism is tracked every year. Tardies are tracked, your grade, in your classroom, your teacher's name. So every year they add more. But you know, I think it was 4 years ago, Governor Snyder and his Department of Health advocated to add BMI to Michigan's data for kids. And I went to the hearing, and it's like, well, why? Why are you adding BMI? Well, we have a lot of fat kids in the state of Michigan. How do you know that? Of course, they know where I'm headed then, right? If you already know we have a bunch of fat kids, why do you need BMI on their data? You don't need to know who is fat. You already have a way of knowing this, so, you know, but it's like, wait, what is she talking about? It's like the whole concept, when No Child Left Behind came in and said you had to track data on every single student, that was a major error. That was a Republican president. That was a major error. Because any environmentalist will tell you, you do not need to test every molecule in a body of water to know if that body of water is polluted. And if your goal is to find out if your state education system is effective, which is all, that's what is the money being used well, are we effective? You can use statistical sampling to determine that. And that is what the NAEP, which has been the nation's report card test, has done for 30 years. Statistical sampling. And we know how to do that. You test some subgroup of kids that you don't track their name because you don't care who they are, because you're just testing the system to see if the system is working. Okay, other questions? You had a question?
I had a question about the state assessment, the opt-out form. Is that, do other states have that as well?
Every state has an
Every
assessment.
state has, okay.
Yes, every state has an assessment.
We have about 15 minutes left. I
Right.
don't know where you want to go. I wanted to know if you could illuminate, just briefly, the intersection of Common Core and homeschooling and charter schools.
Okay, charter schools in Michigan are public schools. They are required to do Common Core. They are required to administer the state assessment. In essence, they are the same as K-12, which was why I was surprised National Heritage Academy was supporting Common Core, because I thought they would have been an ally in the fight, and they weren't. And my personal conclusion is it's because it's a business model. If they can have the same standards across the country, then they can implement the same books, they can buy big book contracts, you know, they can do economies of scale and be very efficient and be more profitable. And I've come to the conclusion that the majority of charter schools in the state of Michigan are interested in profits, not education. And they only teach a little bit better, and they struggle to do that, and that is their claim to fame. I also believe this because we tried to get Hillsdale College academies here in the state of Michigan. 7 applications have been denied. Why? Because they don't teach Common Core, they're classical education. They were willing to bring these schools here and see if we could hold our own on the assessments. But because they know they'll blow them out of the water, that they won't let them come in. So I'm absolutely, so this whole choice and charter school thing, it's a fake, a fraud, a head nod. And if you have any teachers or union folks who are pro-Common Core and anti-charter school, have this conversation with them, because they'll like this part of the conversation. Now, homeschoolers, Catholic schools, Christian schools, any tuition-based school in the state of Michigan does not have to implement Common Core. So this has been absolutely devastating. Many of them are. And the reason is, I met with the superintendent of the Catholic Diocese in Kalamazoo. Well, if I don't do Common Core, my kids won't be able to take the assessment, and I won't be able to prove that my kids are learning better than the public school kids, because we won't have a metric. I won't be able to buy books. Where will I buy books? Because they're all Common Core. Nobody's making anything that's not Common Core. And where will I hire teachers? All the teachers are being trained in this new stuff. Okay, so there's some merit to the argument. But I come back and I say, do you know, in the places where Catholic schools are advertising that they are not doing Common Core, their enrollment is increasing. There's an awesome school in Indianapolis, Lumen Christi School, that my niece is now sending her son to, and they are not Common Core, and they have so many applications, they can't even take all the kids. Now, you would think the Catholic Church, I don't know about you, I'm Catholic, I know there's a little bit of a financial implication about being Catholic, you know? This is an incentive, but it hasn't been enough. But we have a letter from 132 Catholic educators who are just vehemently opposed to Common Core, and it's not on religious grounds. It's on the content of the standards themselves.
I visited my grandson's school in Grand Rapids. He's in 8th grade. They had a grandparents' evening last week, or not evening, in the afternoon. And I sat in on a math, an English class, which was okay, and then a history class. And what he did was a series of photographs, all right, and asked the grandparents, did they recognize these historic pictures? And I would say, of the 30 or 40 pictures that he showed, there was like the iconic KISS World War
Times Square.
Times Square picture. Okay, there was a picture of Iwo Jima. There was a World War II picture. There was a picture of the Enola Gay. And most of it he talked a little bit about the Enola Gay. He went on and on and on about how many of the Japanese were suffering and so on. And then the rest of the entire presentation, maybe 30 or so pictures, was all about the civil rights era. And he had a history of each picture and so on and so forth. I asked my grandson, what about early American history? And he said, yeah, I think we covered that in the first week. I can tell you something. I said, what about the Declaration and Constitution? He said, yeah, we covered that. And I said, do you remember something about all men are created equal, and endowed by their creator, endowed with inalienable rights and so on and so forth. And I said, what were those things? And he stumbled through them with life, liberty, and I said, where do those rights come from? And he said, the Congress. This is a Christian school.
Right.
This is
It's
Grand Rapids Christian.
So homeschool. Homeschool is an excellent answer right now because that's the only way. This opt-out, if you have to put your kids in public school or even the Catholic or Christian schools, this is a good strategy. But homeschool is the best alternative. Michigan has amazing support services for homeschoolers. You don't have to do it yourself. I've met teachers who are homeschool teachers. They have, 20 kids who come to their house on Monday for math, and 20 kids that come to their house on Wednesday for English. And I mean, there are just amazing resources for homeschooling. You can control then what your children are exposed to, and they can get an excellent education, they can get the socialization, they may not get the varsity sports. But at this stage, I think over time, if your kids are in elementary school, varsity sports will move outside of the schools, where we'll start doing more community-based sports. Some areas have hockey and soccer and so forth. Okay, question.
We've been a homeschooling family for 15 years.
Oh, please stand up so we can hear you better.
And the Homeschool Defense League is doing a really good job keeping the homeschool community aware of what's going on with Common Core because it is in the long-term plan to mandate homeschools to go Common Core. They're also giving funding to the Christian School Alliances and the Catholic Diocese as well to try to bribe them into adopting Common Core. That's why you're seeing them go Common Core.
So the only way that you could force homeschoolers to go Common Core is to change the Michigan Constitution, because our right to homeschool is in the Michigan Constitution. So that would be a huge deal, and it's unlikely. Well, the way they're doing it is they're changing the ACT and the SAT. The way to get into college and saying that if you don't know transformational geometry, you're not going to score well on your ACT math part, and so you won't be able to get into college. So that's one of the reasons why I've been working really hard with the new region candidates. So I would strongly advise you to vote for the Republican University region candidates on the ballot this year. They are not all equally committed, but they are all equally informed and in my network to help them understand that this will infiltrate to the universities. There's a column that was just in the paper this week about how the tech schools, Facebook, Google, are refusing to hire minority students who are well qualified. They have the degrees from the universities, and they won't tell why. And they made it all sound like they were just being totally racist, when in fact what it is the kids are getting the degree, but they don't have the qualifications. And I'm having a hard time imagining somebody at a place like University of Michigan is going to redefine what it means to be an engineer so that you're no longer really an engineer when you graduate from University of Michigan. But that's the way it's headed. Because if you get into University of Michigan as a freshman with a Common Core high school diploma, it's going to take you 6 or 7 years to learn what you need to know to be an engineer because you didn't learn it when you were supposed to learn it in high school. So it is a problem. There is a lot of pressure on homeschooling, but Michigan is one of the best protected homeschool places, and so we all need to be very vigilant on that one.
We're gonna have to shut
Oh,
down.
we-
Have some other issues.
Maybe there's
Okay.
one more, are there any
Other questions, I'll hang around.
I want to thank her.
No,
How many people in this room?
if you look around in this room, most of us do not have children in the elementary or high school. Most are in some. All right. What kind of method is your organization or you taking to the local school boards like Spring Lake, like
We're having a hard time getting audience with them, but we sure would appreciate it if you could help us. The best way is for parents in the district to go to the board meeting and speak up with their parents. The real opting out is what's going to serve us.
We're gonna go into a couple more things. Ray has an announcement.
Yeah, in the back I have those opt-out papers that Melanie was talking about. I only have 20 copies, but they're back there in the table. So you're
They're
welcome
on
to-
the Stop Common Core in Michigan website.
Stop Common Core.
In Michigan.
Yes, yeah, that's our website.
How many of us do have children, kids in school? All right. And even of those who don't, some of us have grandchildren in school. I mentioned I've got an 8th grader in school. We had somebody from the media here this evening, and I talked to her briefly outside. I would like you to take, if nothing else, to take an assignment with you. Okay? First off, I do want you to go to our website where I'm going to post a link to the Thomas More resource information on Common Core. I'm also going to post a link to the article that was submitted. It's an op-ed that printed yesterday. But I want you to make a point either tomorrow or Thursday to pick up a copy of the Holland Sentinel. I'd be very, very interested to see if the coverage of this meeting resembled anything like what you heard. Okay? She left. All right. So with that, I'm going to ask, do we have any new business? Okay, new business, Matt.
Okay. Real quick, if you don't remember me or know me, my name is Matt Reno. 2 things. One, I running for Grand Haven School Board as a write-in candidate for the 2-year term. It was left vacant. So if you live in Grand Haven, remember me, get my card because my name is impossible to spell, and I want to make sure you spell it right. And 2, when you talked about the school boards, I can tell you personally, I actually met with the Grand Haven superintendent and school board president before I made this decision to run, and they're proud of Common Core. And I sat there, having just ran for state rep, and said, I'm against it. And I kind of got the impression of lose that idea if you want to join our board. And I thought, okay, sure, I'll lose that. Yep. And I walked away and I get crazy if you don't lose it. I'm coming in to fight that. So that is one of the reasons I'm running for school board. But when I found that out that they're actually embracing it and have no intention of wanting to let go of that, that made me even more eager to get there. Because I can fight from within. I'm fine with that. So that is one of the things, at least with Grand Haven, when I'm out there, is they're proud of it. So.
And let me just elaborate there. Grand Haven includes Spring Lake Township.
Yes, it is.
All right, so if you live over the river, most of the time it's the river.
We have an agenda item about Republican announcements there. Under 820, can I say something about it?
Yeah.
Sure. Jack Holmes.
For any of you who are interested, if you check Ottawa County Republican Facebook page, that's changed several times a day, and you can get a lot of information on there. A lot of events are coming up. Just do the Facebook page. We have a weekly newsletter about everything that's going on. Voters guides are in. We have headquarters in Holland, 513 East 8, 2874 Port Sheldon, and Jenison. Grand Haven is up by the D&W shopping plaza. We are getting almost all of our voter guides stuffed already. We have a lot of activity before the election. I just encourage you to get on Google, Bing, whatever, Ottawa County Republican Facebook page, and it gets updated several times a day. Any help that any of you can give us, we'd sure appreciate it. And also, we're having a Harry Reid retirement party it's going to be the 27th. It's going to be at Victory Farms in Hudsonville, and we're going to have cake and all kinds of things to help Harry retire and to promote that retirement. And you're welcome to come. It starts at 6 o'clock. It'll be done at 7:30. So it's on the Facebook page. We'd love to have you. So I'll be brief.
Yes, and there are voter guides in the back. Okay, and by the way, we are nonpartisan. I'm sure that the Democrats have a voter guide out there somewhere too. I have to Google it. All right. I want to remind you that our next meeting will not be here. It will be in the Lighthouse Baptist Church on 24th Street. That is just to the west of Aldi's and the Elks Club, which is west of 31, sets back from the road, 7 o'clock. And that meeting will feature Mr. Dave Agema, and he'll be talking about how do I say this politically incorrect, undocumented persons who have illegally entered our country and the impact of that. Do we have any other announcements, issues? Yes, Andrew.
Tomorrow night in Grand Haven, they're having a forum on, there's a group that wants to take the Dewey Hill Cross down in Grand Haven. There's a forum tomorrow. There's a group that's fighting to have the cross taken down, so.
What's the time on that? Where is it?
6 o'clock in Grand Haven at the library. I don't know what the library is.
It's the loud, whatever, okay? Yeah, and for those people, the hill where the musical fountain is, on Sunday, they erect a cross up there, long-term contract between the church and the city, and there's a group that wants to have, they want to replace the cross with messages about satanic worship, LGBT, pro-abortion, women's rights, and other themes like that. Beg your pardon?
People who saw it and started complaining.
Yeah, they're not even from Grand Haven. They were offended by it. They were offended by the cross. Doesn't take much to offend some people.
The guy moved from Hawaii.
Yeah, he moved from Hawaii.
Because he's had several lawsuits.
Yeah, he's a lawyer, yes. To who would they write letters and address this? Grand Haven City Council?
I believe so.
The Grand Haven Tribulation? Okay, and by the way, speaking of writing letters, how many people found this meeting useful this evening? Any of you have a pencil and paper, a pen, a computer, a typewriter? We need more input from a conservative viewpoint expressed in the Holland Sentinel. I've met with Jim Timmerman. They are desperate for viewpoints from the right. All they get is from the left. By the way, if anybody does fancy the idea of being a community columnist, I was invited by the editor and the publisher about 3 months ago to write an op-ed. I've done that twice with the help. It's submitted on behalf of the Ottawa County Patriots, and I'd really like you to read that over, by the way. And I will post it on that website probably tomorrow. I'll have it on there. There'll be a link to it. But I talked to him last week. Mike and I did. Jim Timmerman, the opinion page editor, and he said that it would be nice to have a community columnist. And unfortunately, he doesn't want it to be me because he called me a newsmaker. Yeah, tomorrow I'm gonna fly solo over the Atlantic. My name's Charles Lindbergh. So, with that, if anybody has any final announcements, anything at all they'd like to add, yes.
On that cross thing, Jim, I heard some pieces of parts on the radio today. I think there's a number of websites, but one of them I think is called Keep the Cross in Grand Haven. Keep the Cross in Grand Haven.
I will find it and I will post it on that website by tomorrow morning. It may not be there late tonight, but I'll get it tomorrow morning. I want to thank everybody for coming. I want to invite you back again for our next meeting. Again, second and fourth Tuesday. The fourth Tuesday is the 28th, but it won't be here. It will be at the Lighthouse Baptist. Thank you very much. Thank you for coming. And I would especially like to thank Melanie. Did she leave already? Thank you again, Melanie. We have some gifts for new members. Ian, can you take care of that? If you are new here tonight, this was your first time here tonight, the young lady over here, Ann Smith, has a gift for you. If you are not new, I have a gift for you. It's pizza in the back. It's cookies. Indulge yourself.
That would be calling you. All righty. Good seeing you. How are you? You too.
Really? What size is it? Extra large? I might add that. Thank you.
Yeah, I don't know.